You're listening to the Results Driven Organizations podcast with Dr. Tanya Lowe, a podcast of curated conversations with C-suite leaders and those who support organizational growth and development. Get ready for inspiring interviews, educational lessons, and thought-provoking discussions that will challenge you to execute something new and innovative that will drive results in your organization. And now, here's Dr. Tanya Lowe.
Hello, you're listening to the Results Driven Organizations podcast with Dr. Tanya Lowe. Using my results-driven philosophy of strategy, leadership, teams, and customer experiences, I help organizations develop their best-kept secret, their human capital. This podcast is designed to expand the conversation with C-suite leaders and those who support organizational growth and development, and what it really takes to create, develop, and maintain results-driven and high-performing organizations. Our guest today is Bobby Herrera. Bobby Herrera is a transformational leader, author, and the co-founder and president of Populus Group. His journey, encapsulated in the pages of his book, The Gift of Struggle, is a testament to the profound lessons and insights that arise from life's challenges. Growing up in a large family with immigrant parents who arrived in America with modest means, Bobby's story is a familiar narrative of resilience and determination. However, what sets Bobby apart is not just his background, but the unique leadership style and organizational culture it inspired. At the heart of Bobby's philosophy is the unwavering belief that everyone, regardless of their background or circumstances, deserves the opportunity to succeed. He believes that our struggles, whether personal or professional, hold the power to connect us with our communities and inspire transformation. Bobby is a proud Army veteran, currently residing in Portland, Oregon. Bobby, welcome to RDO.
What a joy to be here, Tanya.
I'm so glad.
And what a kind introduction. Thank you.
Oh, you are so welcome. I'm so excited to talk to you. We've been trying to do this for a minute now. I love to share you with our my audience. I've read your book. It was very inspiring to me. I recommended your book to some of my clients. And so we're going to talk about leadership today with your book as the backdrop. Is that okay?
That sounds like fun. Let's do it.
So, first question: what would in the gift of struggle? And one of your mottos is "Hail to the underdog," right?
That's right.
I love it. I love it. I love it. That's my approach when I pick a Super Bowl team. Don't tell anybody. So.
Yeah, well, you should see my March Madness bracket. It's a mess because I'm a sucker for the underdog.
So, in the gift of struggle, you emphasize the importance of embracing challenges, which is something leaders oftentimes don't see as a strength. But if we really look deep at it, it can be a strength, because from those challenges, we truly great things come out of challenges, right? I say opportunity comes out of challenges. So can you share a personal anecdote from your own experiences that illustrates how embracing struggle has been a catalyst for personal or professional growth for yourself?
Oh, I'd be happy to. I think philosophically, as the human animal, like, we don't like pain, and we will do anything in our power to get away from it, right?
Yeah.
However, anecdotally, one of the things that I've always said is, like, yeah, we don't like pain, but without pain, there's no progress. And I encourage, whether it be leaders I work with, fellow underdogs that I'm looking to encourage, I'll often ask them, hey, reflect on your last 5 years, last 5 years of your story. And what would you call that? Like, what would you name that chapter if you were narrating the story of your life? And I want you to include everything: the good, the bad, the even the stuff that you don't want to talk about. And then I'll ask them, what parts of that story gave you the most strength? And more often than not, I mean, they know the answer. You just don't like to experience the process.
Right. They don't want to relive it, but yes.
Right. So, I think, from a principal perspective, it takes us a while to get to that place in our life where we can reflect intentionally on these periods of our life that, gave us that strength. And, intuitively we know it, but intentionally we don't draw from it as much as I think we should, to get to that summit that we imagine as a leader, as a person, as a friend, whatever our journey may be calling us to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. John Maxwell says that through reflection, we find the answers. And I think that, he shares with us that he spends an hour in reflection in the morning and an hour in reflection at night, right? So it's like, oh my goodness. I mean, but then when I really thought about that, and when I sit with that sometimes, that maybe after a coaching session or after I've worked with a client, and I sit in reflection and I look at all the data and I think about, what could I have done differently? What could that leader have done differently? What could that organization have done differently? There are answers in reflection. And so I've tried to make that a part of a consistent part of my life, not just, oh, it's time to sit and reflect about this, but to make it a part of my life, like gratitude, right? Like, I try to make a gratitude list like every day. But in that, there's some reflection as well. And I love what you said about, look at the last 5 years. Look at the last 5 years. Where did you grow the most? Where did you have the most strength? And I can guarantee you that it was through some type of pain. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I'll often do a simple exercise, whether when I'm coaching another leader or helping someone from a reflective perspective. I'll encourage them. Let's go back to the beginning, and I want you to do a real simple exercise. Let's take out a sheet of paper. Let's just make a T chart, and on the left side, let's have you write down what the most significant struggles of your story have been thus far. Well, just one through whatever. Well, just take a moment, reflect. You know what they are. Just write them down. And then what I want you to do is on the right side, I want you to write down to the right of each one what each one taught you. And, that's the gift, and philosophically, my leadership philosophy is pretty simple in that, we all struggle. Every struggle teaches us something, and leadership is sharing those gifts with others. And, if we take some time to do those in a way that helps us understand the strength that we drew from them and continue to reflect on them in a way to where we don't trip over them, when we get triggered or we get stressed or overwhelmed. Welcome to humanity, right?
Welcome to humanity.
Then, you can start building cumulative strength on those when you're inevitably run into a similar situation, which is going to happen. Absolutely.
It absolutely is going to happen. It's interesting that you mentioned, when we're triggered or I was thinking about an organization I was working with, and there was a young lady, I think she might have been a millennial, on the younger scale of the millennial, and everything was a trigger for her. And I can remember asking her, hey, are you in therapy for this? And she was like, no, I'm not. And I was like, do you see how your personal challenges from what's been going on in your life, how they're affecting you at work? What if you turn those around for the positive instead of constantly re-triggering herself and re-triggering yourself? And so She'd never thought about that. She actually ended up leaving the organization, but I oftentimes thought about her as a case study because we have those people in our organizations that I think we can learn from and that they can learn from other people. And we talk about the humanity, tapping into that. We all bring our struggles to work with us. We don't get a chance to pack them away in a nice little bag. So it opens the door for coaching, for learning, for embracing each other, but also an opportunity to build each other up. What do you think about that?
First and foremost, I think amen. Secondly, struggle's an adhesive. It connects us. It helps us understand one another. And furthermore, I encourage leaders as part of sharing those gifts. It's like, how are you sharing those? Because once you do, and you truly understand the power of the fact that, stories help us heal. Stories help us understand one another. Mm-hmm. And they have this magical way of tapping into shared beliefs. And, in the case of this individual you were talking about, there's no doubt shared experiences where, she or maybe asking like, hey, they don't understand me. And often through a story, they'll be like, oh, maybe they do.
Yeah.
And then they can, participate in their own rescue, so to speak, right? Because
absolutely.
What's that proverb? Or it's like when the student is ready, the teacher will appear.
Mm-hmm.
And it's gentle nudging through the power of a leader sharing a story about their own struggles draws people in.
Yeah.
And I think a leader's responsibility in many cases is to help absorb the pain of the people that they lead.
Yeah.
And create something meaningful out of it and, connect with them.
Yeah. It's the humanity that we talked about. It's being vulnerable, having the courage to be vulnerable. Mm-hmm. And vulnerability doesn't mean, you're a weak leader, but if you can show your vulnerability as a leader, it opens the door to other people saying, oh, wow, this is a person with a heartbeat. They're not the Tin Man. And it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to not know. Because now we've got somewhere to go. We can go from this place of not knowing. We can go from what does my vulnerability mean as a leader and how can I activate my team to grow from here? Or where do we grow from here from my sharing this? How do I connect? I love vulnerability as a connecting tool, as you said, because it closes the gap between them and us. Just kind of closes the gap.
Right. Yeah. And did I learn that the hard way? I compartmentalized with the best of them. It took me a while to figure out that vulnerability was a core competency and a strength of leadership. And once I finally participated in my own rescue, some magical things happened, and I'm blessed that I finally got past that point. But it took me a while.
Oh yeah, it's a process. It's a process. So, Bobby, in the gift of struggle, let's talk to new managers for a second. Mm-hmm. So, leadership is a reoccurring theme in the book. We think about new managers who want to make an impact. What specific advice or strategies do you offer to navigate the challenges of leadership, especially in the early stages as a manager, or maybe someone who is new in the C-suite, or more specifically, someone who's going from buddy to boss, right? Mm-hmm. Those are some of the challenges that I see in the workplace. So what advice, recommendations would you give to a new leader?
Well, a bit of a split on words here, but the encouragement versus advice that I would offer, because I try real hard not to be an advice monster, is you know, we've all heard, and it's overplayed, the narrative, like, leadership is an inside job, but often um, my observation has been that there's not. I know when I wrote The Gift of Struggle, I wrote the book I wish someone would have written for me, and because I didn't know how. It's like, okay, it starts with me, but how do I do that?
Yeah.
And I specifically broke up the book into three parts, and those three parts are simple, but they also have what I believe are very um, like deep reflective questions that help us self-assess where we are in that journey in becoming the leader or the person that we imagine. And obviously, first and foremost, I believe the most important question that we could ask ourselves on a leadership journey, whether it's at the beginning and or any time along the way, is, hey, who am I becoming? And that's one of values, beliefs, and what kind of person I actually want to be. And that ultimately drives us to the next part of the book is am I giving more than I'm taking? Which as a leader, it's there is no such thing as balance.
No.
People often ask me, and I'm not talking about work-life balance, I'm talking about contribution. Yes, you have to guide people along, but it's the way that you do it. And so I'll offer encouragement in terms of encourage leaders to self-assess in how they show up, how they build trust, how they demonstrate all the leadership attributes, from curiosity to to compassion. Like, are you giving more than you're taking? And that's a real simple assessment that any leader can do, whether new or somewhere further advanced in their journey. And then the last part is choosing your impact, right? And how are you choosing your impact? And that can be taken in various directions. In other words, what am I saying yes to? What am I saying no to? Right? Who am I saying yes to? Who am I saying no to? Because we have limited margin. We have a deep desire to make a big impact. Well, that's only going to be determined by the force that you put into the choices you make, right? And so, I'll offer that as encouragement for leaders, specifically in the beginning of their journey. If they start with a self-assessment of looking at those three big questions: who am I becoming? Am I giving more than I'm taking? And how am I choosing my impact? And then getting in a routine and a practice of continually self-assessing themselves accordingly, they will be light years ahead of where I was in the beginning part of my journey.
Ooh. When you said, you wrote this book because it's something you wish you had, it made me think about Lisa Nichols. Lisa Nichols always says that, the programs and things that she does, she created what she wished she had. She created what she needed. And, as you were talking, those questions that you self-assess, what do I want to become? These are great reflection questions, an opportunity for you, self-assessment. As you're doing a self-assessment, take that time and be honest with yourself about, who am I becoming? What can I do better? Where do I need to be more curious? Am I showing more? Do I need to show more compassion and understanding? We do the DISC work of leaders assessment, and one of my clients, all of their C-suite, they're all Gen Xers like myself, and all of their assessments showed that they all needed to show more compassion. They all need to be more available to the people on their team. And I mean, it was like they were all the way to the right, which is not good. And so that was an area that they were really struggling with. They came from the error of, well, you're getting your check, so that should be enough. But you're leading millennials and younger, that's not enough. They need the developing, they need the compassion, they need direction and wisdom. And so it's, then they fall back on, well, I never got that. Well, hey, you're going to always be in this turnover cycle if you don't develop this skill and develop this muscle of how to work with reflect on what you can do and integrate that into your day, into your team. It will make a huge difference for the culture of the organization.
Undoubtedly. A couple of thoughts that provokes for me is, first and foremost, these well-intended leaders that are saying, well, I never got it. I'm not buying that for 1 second. Yeah. I would guarantee you, please give me 10 minutes in the room with them. I guarantee you that very quickly, I would draw out from them someone that saw them, someone that untapped their hidden potential, someone that made them feel like they were actually like worthy of encouragement, and someone that really like made them want to be a better version of themselves. Yeah. And all they have to do is replicate that.
Yes. Right?
In some cases, it's a teacher, it's a coach, it's a, could have been a parent, could have been an aunt or an uncle. It was somebody, but somebody saw them. Right? Yeah. And the power of making someone feel seen is undeniable. I mean, it changed my life. I start the book that way.
Yes.
And you just never know. You never know. So, I'd start with those leaders first. And then, so often we change the narrative of how they're viewing compassion. It's like, make someone feel seen, right? Yeah. Someone that's feeling socially invisible. You never know the impact that's going to have on them.
Yeah. We all want to be seen and heard and appreciated, right?
Sure. Absolutely.
For whatever we bring to the table, and value that. Don't be so focused on the bottom line and the we've got to get this done, the to-do list with 1,000 things on it. Your human capital, the people in your organization, matter. They're not cogs on a wheel. So the time that you take seeing them, hearing them, showing appreciation is not wasted time. It's never wasted time.
Never. Yeah. Some people, like to receive it differently. Yeah. That's diversity. We're all different.
Absolutely.
But that's not a pass for a leader not to provide encouragement. I'll often ask leaders, specifically the big wigs with the fancy titles and the fancy acronyms, I'll be like, all right, I got a question for you. What does CEO stand for? And I'll get some creative, they'll look at me because they know it's a trick question, Tanya, and they'll look at me and they're like, well, it stands for Chief Executive Officer, but I'm guessing that you're going to take us in a different direction. I'm like, absolutely. My humble opinion is that it stands for two things: Chief Encouragement Officer and Chief Editing Officer. And so your responsibility as a leader is to, one, make them feel seen, make them feel valued, make them feel appreciated. And that's not just catching them doing things right. That's correcting them when they need to get back in the boundaries of the community that you're building, right? Yeah. That's also encouragement. Yeah. And as a chief editing officer, your responsibility is to make sure that they understand like what's most important, what's most essential, what's great look like. Clarify those expectations so that they're not wasting their time. And that's part of the editing process. Every conversation, you must be editing the impact that you want them to make by asking great questions and facilitating these conversations to where, if they're wasting their time, that's not on them, that's on you. Yeah. So anyway, kind of pulled my own string there, but I felt timely to again, lean into that narrative of, that's how lack of compassion shows up, by not
Yes.
doing those things, right? And that is the job of a leader.
Yeah.
So
There's a lot of, I guess, deconstructing of that has to take place with some leadership, because they're having to figure this out, unfortunately, the hard way. Is that, the role of leader, I can't say is changing, it has changed.
right.
It's changed. And so you've got to do more. You've got to not just, I'm going to send this person to training, but I've got to develop them as well. And what does that development look like? And it can't just be done once a year for annual review time. That is not development. You've got to make some time.
Right. Like an example of compassion that comes to mind for me when it comes to, the encouragement, recently, I have a soon to be 15-year-old boy. And at that age, I had practically every ounce of brain matter had already fallen out of my head. Well, he's following suit.
Okay.
And so he did something recently, and I looked at him and I said, "Hey, may I ask you a question, son?" I was all, "Did you observe Dad do that sometime, and to where it gave you the indication that that was okay and acceptable?" And he just looked at me and he's like, "No." I said, "Okay, I was just making sure that I'm not modeling that for you." I didn't have to say another word.
Yeah.
So, that's compassion, right? Making sure that, am I, like, hey, I'm assuming the responsibility of setting the example for you. If I'm setting a bad example for you, then hey, let me first and foremost correct myself, because I don't want you to do that.
Right.
Right. So, and we can do that every day in our organizations. Yeah. Every day.
Yeah.
Every day. Yeah.
Wow.
So,
And that's I love that example, because not only does it create dialogue, but it also creates an opportunity for change on both sides.
and exactly. And he reflected on his own behavior immediately. Right. And it made it a conversation to where he didn't feel like I was just coming after him. Because often we're a protective species, right? If someone's coming after us to correct us or to, guide us, I mean, we're, depending on where we are in our journey, or the situation, there could be tension around it or whatever, you're going to naturally want to protect yourself. Right. So as a leader, you want to make sure that you approach those conversations in a way that disarms, diffuse, and deflects that guard immediately going up to the best of your ability. Right? So, and so, one part of the gift of struggle is, one of the lessons is own your part. Right? That's an example of owning your part.
Yeah.
Right. So, like, it doesn't matter what the problem is. Like, we all contribute to the problem somehow, some way.
Yes.
Own your part, and then the whole will be a lot more. Then you're much better able to, fix the whole. If you're approaching that conversation saying, "Hey, I'm going to own my part. I want to make sure that I fix what I'm contributing to this." The person on the other side is going to be more likely to say, "Yeah, me too."
Yeah. Right. It's that self accountability.
Right.
Of, I could have communicated better. I was in a rush that day that we were having a conversation, and I didn't give you all of the pieces. I didn't give you all the pieces. I didn't give you what you needed at all. So there has to be some humility, and not humility and less throwing people under the bus, because I see that a lot. Right. Like, we just, like you said, have the dialogue, reflect, and make the adjustment, so that we can move along. So as we're talking about teams and working with people in our departments and teams, I know that people don't want to mess up. I want to do a good job. I don't want to mess up. How can leaders communicate to their teams that it's okay to mess up, it's okay to struggle? They foster a culture where challenges can be seen as opportunities. How can they do that? How can they encourage their teams to, it's okay to come to me if you don't know. It's okay if you mess up, nobody died, but let's fix it. What would you say to that leader?
I'd say, wow, we're about to have some fun. Because you remember that first exercise that I shared about making the T exercise and what are those?
Yes.
Well, often when I do that exercise as part of the follow-up, I will ask, how many of these stories do the people that you lead know?
Mm-hmm.
And, I'll say, if self-assessing your own leadership courage and grit is important to you, just take a mental inventory of how many of these stories the people that you lead understand. I'm not talking about airing your dirty laundry. I'm not talking about, crossing any lines here.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody has those stories.
Yes.
And so if they haven't shared those stories first and foremost from a human perspective, right, then my observation has been that they're not sharing those stories of their professional journey. Right? And so, when I wrote The Gift of Struggle, one of the things that was important for me is, to provide examples where I stepped in it. For the majority of my beginning part of my professional journey, Tanya, I was walking through a minefield with clown shoes on. You name the minefield, I stepped in it. And I wanted to make that very obvious.
Yeah.
And I wanted to demonstrate examples of, look, here's where I stepped in it. And here's what I learned. And here's how I carried that forward. Right? And so that's why I structured the book the way that I did, with a life lesson tied to a business lesson, and then with reflective questions at the end to help encourage that same process for the reader. And more often than not, the questions, when I ask those questions to a leader, very few of the people they lead understand that journey.
Yeah.
Right. And, so you have to, my belief is you have to start there again, pave the way for that safety. Otherwise it's never going to happen. Right. Never.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't think it's ever too late to go back and do that, especially
Never.
with teams that are in turmoil, kind of bad. And then that's something that I wish that I knew early on in my career. But I don't think it's ever too late to go back and say, hey, some of the things that are happening here, I experienced those things, and this is how I moved past them, and this is how I like to see us move past them as a team, as a department. What are your thoughts? What have some of your challenges been? Maybe not here, but in other places, and having that dialogue. What I'm finding, Bobby, and I don't know if you see this as well, is that we're so focused on the business, we don't know who's on the left and right side of us. We don't know what they bring to the table and how they can help the organization in ways other than just what the job description says. I hope that makes sense. Because I feel like people, I have your resume, I'm hiring you for this, and that's all I see. I don't look at the rest to see, oh, this person is bringing a cadre of skills and abilities and talents to this organization. I wonder what it took for them to develop those. What did it take for you to be here today? I think that would create more understanding. And again, here's that word again, connectedness on teams.
There's no doubt. There's no doubt. With your permission, maybe I can go in a couple of different directions here.
Yes,
but first and foremost, I'll often do what I call pay it forward workshops for, veteran entrepreneurs or minority entrepreneurs. I call them fellow underdogs who wanted to take more control of their story, just like I've been blessed to. And, I'll gather them. But early on, one of the first questions I ask them, mutually exclusive of their business, because there could be 5 of them in the room with completely different businesses. And I'll ask them, what's the single most important asset that your organization will ever own? And they will, they'll give me some creative answers, right? But I'm guiding them towards one place. And where I guide them to is trust. Right? Trust is the single most important asset that your organization will ever own. Tanya, it's the only metric I truly care about. And I've been measuring the trust in my organization for years. And I encourage leaders to self-assess every interaction. Whether or not you're leaving that interaction having built trust or eroded trust. Everybody knows. Right? Don't tell me you don't, because we all have that built in. I call Huzanga meter. Huzanga is a term that a fellow soldier taught me in the military that, grew up on a Navajo reservation. It's Navajo slang for BS, right? So we all have that Huzanga meter in our belly. We know. And as a leader, when trust is going south or trust is going up, and you don't even have to measure it through external sources like I do, and, I'll guide them through the understanding that, it's like the higher the trust, the faster the speed, and the lower things cost. The lower the trust, the lower the speed, and the more things cost, right? So you tell me, is that important for your business? And obviously every single one of them can only say one thing: yes, right? But then as you go to start building your organization, I've ceremoniously, ever since I started Populus Group, and this is a fundamental part of our selection, we select, we don't hire. And, the difference there is, organizations that hire, Tanya, they hire off the front of the resume. Organizations that select, we flip the resume over.
Yes.
And so I've ceremoniously flipped the resume over, and I'll look at the person across the table from you. I'm like, I'm not going to ask you a single question about the front of your resume. It's like, because unless I misunderstand something, your resume doesn't define who you are, does it? And they're like, no. I say, well, great. Tell me a story about your childhood. Take me back to the beginning. And tell me a story about X. And I want to know who they are. And what I'm doing is I'm asking myself 2 questions. Number 1, do they believe what I believe? Number 2, can I trust them? Yes. And the only way that you can do that is getting to know who that person has become up to that point in their story, right? And from there, you can really understand, what kind of attitude is this person bringing to my community? What kind of beliefs are they bringing to my community? What kind of grit are they bringing to my community? Because last time I checked, that's the stuff that matters.
That's the stuff that matters.
Right? So ceremoniously, we've done that step 1. And that's the difference between selection versus hiring.
Yeah. Bobby, I love that. We don't hire, we select. And
right.
You get to know that person on the front end. And you're going to automatically know if they are a good fit, if you will, for the culture that you've created.
Exactly. And that's ultimately what we're assessing, right? you know, do does this person belong in our community?
Mm-hmm.
And that has to be aligned to what we believe. Will they contribute to our purpose? Will they contribute to our values? Will they uphold our culture code? And we have a very specific cultural code that we expect every climber. That's my term for employees. I don't call my employees. That doesn't mean anything to me. I call them climbers, and based off my passion for the mountains. And so yeah, it's the back of the resume where you start. Otherwise, the front doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Right. The front's permission to play. Of course, they have to be able to do that job. Right. But will they contribute in a meaningful way to our community? Because I'm narrating a story here, and I want people who I can trust, and I can hand them the pen that are going to help me write that story. Right. So
I love every piece of that. Bobby, we're in a culture now where it's I call it the throw it away culture. We'll throw people away, block them, delete them, throw them away. And I don't know where that fits as it relates to perseverance and resilience. Your book delves in the role of resilience and leadership. Can you talk to us a little bit about how resilience has played a pivotal role in your own leadership journey, even at Populus, and maybe provide some insights for aspiring leaders on building and maintaining resilience in the face of adversity? You can't, I oftentimes, when I go into organizations, I tell them, you can't bring your social media behaviors into the workplace to deal with people. We've got to, if we can, persevere past some of the challenges that may take place in an organization in order to build people up and not be so quick to throw them away. And so can you speak to that?
Yeah, I can. And some of the thoughts of that provokes for me, Tanya, is, I believe most leaders, early in their journey, they're so determined to make an impact and to make their mark, and there's ambition. And obviously that's going to continue, but, they're well-intended. And I know I was wired the same way. Like, I wanted to make a name for myself. I wanted to make my mark. I wanted to, establish my brand, whatever you want to call it. And, what I failed to learn in the beginning was that, I myself, when I do things, if I knew a better way, I would do it. Right. And however, what I wasn't doing is I wasn't extending that same benefit of the doubt to others. And, and so where I'm going with that is, if we as a person are going to be the kind of people that, hey, if we knew a better way, we would do it, right? Like, how many times in our life have we said, well, that's not what I meant, or I didn't mean to?
Yes.
Right? Welcome to humanity again, right? Well, with our people and the people that we're leading, when it comes to, perseverance and resilience, is understanding that when someone's not doing something or they need help, it's usually one of three reasons. Either they don't know how, they can't, or they won't, right? And all three of those have different approaches for us as a leader in our journey of being, resilient and leading our people and continuing our belief with them. The won't, that's an easy conversation, right? If they won't, then there's something that happened when you didn't flip over the resume, right? And you need to let that good person, you need to make them available to the marketplace. That's just a part of leadership.
Yes.
If it's one of the other two, then you need to get very Socratic and figure out, okay, why can't they? Are they in a different role? Are they, is their skill better served somewhere else in the organization? Is there something that I'm not doing? How am I, is it something in terms of how I'm not communicating? All those Socratic questions, owning your part and figuring out, all right, this is what I've contributed to, and this is how I've contributed to it. Somehow it's not working, right? And starting there, and then, once you do that, figuring out, okay, well, what's their contribution? Right. And so when I found myself in that situation, I've sat with people, whether it be leaders that I've had on my team or whatever, and I said, look, we're stuck here.
Mm-hmm.
And I slowed down and I asked myself, what have I done to help get us unstuck? And this is everything that I feel I've done to contribute up to this point.
Mm-hmm.
And yet we're still stuck. I'm like, I'm obviously doing something wrong. Can you tell me what it is? Because I can't see it.
Yeah.
And then that opens that conversation up to where they're like, oh, okay, well, he's owning his part. Or sometimes it'll go to like, yeah, you know what? I need to get my stuff together here. Or, no telling what direction they'll take it into, right? But you have to be willing to go that one extra step. My observation, where I'm getting here is that persistence or perseverance, because I think that's different than persistence, but
Yes.
perseverance, resilience, it usually doesn't happen because someone's not willing to take that one extra step. Yeah. And so I'm like, okay, you'd rather start all over than take that one step. Oh, so if you don't have time to do this right, when are you going to have time to do it over?
Oh, right. Exactly.
Right. So, we just have to participate in our own rescue when it comes to stuff like that.
Yeah. As you were talking, it reminded me of a client I had about 5 years ago. Everything is like before the pandemic, after the pandemic. So this is before the pandemic. And he had everybody reapply for their jobs. They were scared that they were getting ready to go through layoffs and all of this stuff. But he wanted to shake things up to make sure that, are these people still are you still in the right seat on the bus? Is there something else you rather be doing in the organization? And he made some shifts. He made some shifts and moved some people around to better seats, and it changed their productivity immensely by doing that. And and everyone was happy. Everyone was happy. They were scared out of their wits in the beginning because they didn't know what was going on. But he wanted to get, he felt like if he told them up front what he was doing, it was going to kind of change the perspective. So if you don't know what you're walking into, and I say, are you happy here? What, I think he asked them like maybe 3, maybe 4 questions, but were they happy there? If they could pick something else to do in the organization, what would it be?
Right.
And I think one of the most important questions that I really liked is, he asked them about their goals, not necessarily for that organization or that role, but what are your goals? Bobby, what are your goals? Where do you see yourself? Which is, I know some leaders struggle with even asking that question because they're afraid that someone's going to say, well, I want your job, or I want to, move out of what I'm doing. So many times I hear managers and other climbers saying, if I share what I want to do, I feel like it's going to be blocked and I won't be able to move up in the organization because I do this well and they want to keep me here. And
that's not good.
I can relate to that from coming from government.
Sure. Absolutely.
That happens in government. And
absolutely.
Many times leaders, people will keep their goals to themselves and unfortunately maybe take them to another organization instead of saying, feeling comfortable enough to say, Bobby, this is what I'd like to do. This is what
Right.
I've always wanted to do. And then maybe there's a way, because we already know that you do well in this place,
Right.
then maybe we can, you can continue to grow in this organization and we move you from A to B. But
Right.
in many places, that's not happening.
Yeah. I mean, and that's unfortunate. And I think it's unrealistic for us, anyone that's ever either run an organization, run a team, to, we always have to, you know, assume that, man, there's things happening in organizations that we have no idea about, right?
Ooh.
And there's, until we have all the information, we can't really relate. But my experience has been that, as a leader, I've always felt the immense responsibility to, understand, hey, with my team or my teams or my people, it's like, what are the things that bring them joy and energy? And are they doing a disproportionate amount of that? Right? What are their gifts? And am I asking them to use those gifts in a way that solve the biggest problems that we have in this organization? So as a leader, that requires me to make sure they know what those problems are and to encourage them to hear me say, I need your help fixing these because I don't know how by myself. Right? Again, that's where diversity comes into play. That's where different thinkers who like to do different things in different ways come into play. And, putting that all together isn't easy, but yet it starts with a simple evaluation as a leader of asking yourself, am I leading my organization or my community in a way to where my people feel like I want more from them, more for them than from them? Right?
Yeah.
And again, that's that compassion. That's that Socratic approach, asking a lot of questions, and doing a lot of these things consistently over time. Right? And knowing that when you step in it, not if, when. You're like, man, I really messed that up, didn't I?
Yeah.
So, what do you got for me? And it's a journey, but all hail the underdogs. We got to keep fighting and keep believing in those people and keep believing in ourselves and focusing on the good that people are doing, right? Because I believe that as humans, we all share three basic desires. We want to stand out, we want to fit in, and we want to be a part of something bigger than ourselves. That's how we're wired, right? And understanding that fundamentally as a leader and approaching our people with that in mind, you can make some pretty profound corrections in your leadership journey very quickly.
I absolutely agree. I absolutely agree. Bobby, what are you reading that we should be reading?
Oh, great question. It's actually a reread.
Okay.
That's one of the things that I do. I'm actually rereading a book titled The Wisdom Pyramid. I'm very unapologetic about my faith, and it's been a great read for me and a great reminder for me to really take a consistent self-assessment of where I'm acquiring my wisdom. I just believe that the world needs more sages and CEOs. And in order for us to acquire that wisdom, to pay forward, what we want the next generation to do, and for us to ultimately check what I call the ultimate box, will my story matter? We have to acquire that wisdom from our life experiences in a way where we can continue fuel it. So, the book walks you through a way to really reflect on, hey, what are your sources of wisdom? And how are you absorbing that into your life in a way that helps you become that person that you want to become? So it's a great read, and it's short. I'm not a big book kind of reader. I see too many squirrels. I've got to read something simple and palatable and impactful. Otherwise, it's going to be an expensive coaster for me.
Oh, The Wisdom Pyramid. I will be adding that to our list.
Yeah, it's a great read.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. We've been chatting with Bobby Herrera, transformational leader, author, and the co-founder and president of the Populus Group. Visit the show notes to connect with Bobby and grab the link to his book, The Gift of Struggle. Be sure to grab a copy of Results-Driven Organizations, The 4 Keys to a High-Performance Workplace. You can use the link in the show notes and grab our special gift to you for being a valuable listener. Until next time.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Results Driven Organizations podcast with Dr. Tanya Lowe. Be sure to review the show notes for the resources mentioned, and don't forget to grab your free gift available at freegiftfromtanya.com. Until next time.